Let's dive into the discussions shaping the nation.
Margaret Cancorla, Minister, the so-called housing SAR debacle has left more questions than answers, and not just questions about salary either. The Minister for Housing has been very quiet in responding to these questions. We need to hear from him, here in the Dáil. He must come to us to explain how he proposes his new Housing Activation Office will work. He cannot leave explanations to the Minister of State for Nature and Biodiversity, as he did on the radio last Friday. Over recent weeks, we have heard plenty of noise from government about unblocking blockages, tackling shortfalls, maverick approaches, boots on the ground, but no detail. Minister, will there be legislative underpinning for this new office? Will it do more than check the Minister's homework? And crucially, how much will it cost? And I think whatever the salary, what everyone is struggling to understand is what will the Housing SAR do that the Housing Minister cannot do themselves? Because the Minister is currently failing on housing. Minister, let's take some examples. On infrastructure, we learned yesterday about the lack of funding for Uisce at a time when we're hearing so much from developers, from house builders, about delays due to infrastructure. We heard yesterday the extra $1 billion for Uisce in the budget did not actually represent additional funding. What my colleague Deputy Jed Nash has called a three-card trick pre-election, a bit like the promise of 40,000 homes last year. And infrastructure is slowing delivery. Lack of infrastructure is slowing delivery. We're hearing it in Mallow, where 469 houses are being delayed due to infrastructure problems. We're hearing it in Dublin too. And we're hearing other issues as well. Take Pearse House, just a few hundred metres from here, Minister, a large flat complex in the process of being regenerated. But just over recent weeks, we hear from the Department of Housing there's been a hold on regeneration plans, partly because that building is listed. Residents are devastated, Minister. They're facing appalling conditions, sewage overflowing, unsafe stairwells, damp houses. It's not just Pearse House either. Regeneration is badly needed at Oliver Bond Flats, at Mercer House and across developments across the country. And it's ironic that Pearse House is listed because it's one of the Herbert Simms developments built in the 1930s. Minister, between 1932 and 1948, Simms built 17,000 homes across our capital city, a programme of building at scale precipitated by a famous report which was commissioned in response to worsening conditions in the tenements and which concluded that the state had to deliver homes at scale because the private sector was incapable of doing so. Minister, the words of that report are very reminiscent of the words in your own Housing Commission's report, seeking a radical reset of housing policy, seeking that the state would play an integral role in providing counter-cyclical support to ensure that home building could proceed at scale. What we're not hearing from your government is any recognition of the need for that urgent and radical reset in housing.
Time is up.
Minister, people are being left without a home. They don't want a SAR. They want a home.
Deputy.
What will your Housing Minister do to reassure us that he is going to deliver homes?
To respond.
Well, just say, I think everyone across the House acknowledges that the state has to play a central role in the future of infrastructure delivery in our economy and also in the provision of housing across our economy. And that's why that's been acknowledged in the context of what we are going to do and how we strategically invest over €20 billion from the Apple Escrow Fund, from the Infrastructure, Climate and Nature Fund, in terms of the prioritising housing, energy, water and transport infrastructure, all as critical growth-enabling areas that we need to invest in to protect and progress Ireland's future. Again, you're critical of the Housing Activation Office and what Minister Brown has sought to do, and in the interim, staff are being deployed from the Department of Housing into that office with seconding respective experts from utilities to try and address some of the blockages that exist at a local level. I'm also stepping up an infrastructure division in the Department of Public Expenditure to respond back to the absolute need to accelerate infrastructure delivery across our economy. And in parallel with that, we're developing a programme of reform so that we try and address and narrow a lot of the timelines which are too long and are too elongated in terms of the delivery of housing and infrastructure across our state. And it's all about trying to synchronise delivery between water, energy, utility providers and the respective delivery agents that need to to deliver more across our economy. When it comes to your question on Irish Water, as I set out on Budget Day, a €1 billion equity investment was provided for in Budget 2025 following the sale of the bank shares, and this was in addition to the voted Exchequer allocation provided as part of the funding mix. And you reference the correspondence from the Chair of Irish Water, and an excellent Chair, who's also, I know, the Chair of of Dublin Port, should I say. And he obviously reflected the need for clarity and concerns that was responded to at the time by the Minister for Housing, and in further correspondence from the Chair, he acknowledged the appreciation of the Uisce Éireann Executive and Board for the commitment of the Department, the Minister at the time, and indeed the Government, and that the support and the responsiveness of the Department had been genuinely helpful, that he appreciated the time and attention given to clarifying the funding available for Uisce Éireann for 2025 and the use allocation of the additional €1 billion capital investment. So a few days after the correspondence that you referenced, the Minister clarified the matter, and that was acknowledged by the Chair of Irish Water at the time. But I do acknowledge the need, particularly for water infrastructure, for additionality to accelerate the delivery of additional wastewater treatment and to also provide for additional connections for new homes. And that's why we've been very clear that water investment will be central to the allocation that will be received in the National Development Plan in July, and why it is a strategic area of priority for the Government. So Irish Water has the multi-annual funding to really accelerate delivery where there is a significant deficit across the
Deputy Bacik.
Well, Minister, it's very difficult to take seriously your government's commitments on infrastructure or on housing delivery. On infrastructure, what's clear from the correspondence, what's clear from the revelations about Uisce Éireann is that they simply have not been provided with the necessary additional resourcing to enable them to step up, to provide the vital connections that are necessary to ensure building at scale. On delivery of homes, again, that 40,000 figure that we now know is 10,000 off. And across the country, we're seeing communities who are left bereft, awaiting housing developments that were long promised. Poolbeg, the Irish glass bottle site. We were promised thousands of new homes there. I met last week with the local housing action group there, Minister, and they're still despairing of hearing a firm agreement on the numbers of social and affordable homes to be provided on that crucial site. So we're simply not seeing the delivery of homes, we're not seeing the delivery of infrastructure, and we still haven't heard from your Minister as to exactly what the Housing Activation Office is going to bring that will be additional and that will provide for the necessary capacity to build at the scale that Herbert Sims built at all those decades ago.
Minister.
Look, the Housing Activation Office will be there to better coordinate delivery in terms of the provision and supply of homes at a local level, and the Minister will set out further details around that. He's working through the details, he's stepping up the office itself, and he's also will provide leadership when it comes to the actual person that may be appointed in time around that particular office, and that is to coordinate delivery and the provision of the increased supply of homes across our economy. We acknowledge that there is an infrastructure deficit. We acknowledge that there's a need for additionality across water, energy, transport and housing, and that's why we're taking a strategic approach to having an early review of the National Development Plan and prioritising key areas in those four particular areas that I've referenced, all with the central focus of increasing the supply of homes across our economy. We've historic increases in the provision of direct support for social and affordable housing, when a significant portion of the homes delivered last year were through the direct contribution of the state. And you will see through the National Development Plan a serious uplift in that in the context of those four areas. That we support infrastructure delivery
now move to the Independent and Parties Technical Group.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.